All right, let's jump right in. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on one of the most talked about and, honestly, one of the most misunderstood technologies out there, blockchain. We hear the word all the time, but what is it, really? We're going to break it all down, piece by piece, to understand this thing they call the ledger that no one owns but somehow everyone can trust. But before we get into the tech, let me ask you something. Just think for a second. Where do you actually put your trust when you're online? You know, when you send money or share a photo or buy something, you're basically just trusting a bank or a big company to get it right. Well, this whole explainer is really about a massive shift in how we think about that trust. For the longest time, our digital world has been built on what we call centralized trust. You trust your bank to handle your money. You trust a social media company to hold on to your data. But that model, well, it puts all our faith in one single place, and that has led to a real evolution in how we need to think about trust online. Which brings us right to our first big topic, the problem with trust. Because, you see, before we can really appreciate the solution, we have to get super clear on the exact problem that blockchain was invented to solve. See, when you've got one central authority, a bunch of problems pop up. If their main server goes down, guess what? The whole system is out. They can be pretty opaque about how things work. They can charge you high fees because, hey, they're the middleman. And that one central database, it becomes a giant, juicy target for hackers. This is exactly why people started looking for a totally new way of doing things. So, knowing all those problems, innovators started asking a really powerful question. What if we could build a system for trust that didn't depend on a single company? What if we could get rid of the middleman? This line of thinking led to something truly revolutionary, a new kind of ledger. And here it is. At its very heart, a blockchain is really just a shared digital notebook. Now imagine a notebook that isn't owned by one person. Instead, an identical copy is shared with thousands of people. And every time a new entry is made, every single copy gets updated almost instantly. It's a simple idea, but it has absolutely massive implications for security and transparency. Okay, so shared a notebook sounds simple enough, right? But how does it actually work under the hood? Well, the real magic is in its structure, which is built on three core ideas: blocks, chains, and the decentralized network itself. First up, let's talk about the block. The easiest way to think about a block is as a single page in our shared notebook. It's basically just a package that bundles together a bunch of records or transactions. And once that page is full, it gets sealed with this unique digital fingerprint called a hash. It's a one-of-a-kind code that perfectly represents everything written on that page. Next, we've got the chain. Now, this is where the real security magic happens. Each new page, or block, is cryptographically linked to the one right before it. See, it actually contains the unique hash of the previous block, which creates this long chronological chain. And here's the crucial part. If you tried to go back and change something on an old page, you would change its hash. That would instantly break the chain, and the entire network would immediately know that something's not right. And finally, the big one, decentralization. This is the whole no one owns it part. Instead of that notebook being stored on one company's server, a copy is held by basically everyone participating in the network. Each one of those participants is called a node. This distribution of power means there's no single point of failure, and more importantly, no single person or company in charge. So let's put it all together and see what a transaction actually looks like. Let's say you want to send some money. First, your transaction is requested. Step 2, that request is broadcast out to all the computers, the nodes on the network. Third, all those computers get to work verifying that the transaction is legit. And finally, once it's verified by the network, your transaction gets bundled into a new block, which is then added to the chain forever. It's all done out in the open in a totally democratic way. And this really gets to the heart of the fundamental shift here. We're moving from a world where we trust people and institutions, which can make mistakes, to a world where we trust pure mathematics. The system is called trustless, but that doesn't mean you can't trust it. It means you don't have to trust any one person. The only thing you have to trust is that the code and the math work. So, a big question is, how does this whole network agree on what's true? They do it using something called a consensus mechanism. Now, the two most famous ones are proof of work and proof of stake. Proof of work, that's what Bitcoin uses, is like a really, really hard math competition. It's incredibly secure but uses a ton of energy. Proof of stake is more like putting up a security deposit. Users stake their own coins to participate, giving them skin in the game.
As you can see, each approach has its own trade-offs, especially around energy and speed.
Okay, so we've dug into the mechanics, the how of it all. But honestly, this technology is about so much more than just a new way to handle money. Let's explore some of the other ways it could totally change how entire industries work.
Of course, it all kicked off with Bitcoin. That was the big proof of concept. It was the first thing that showed the world this crazy idea of decentralized ledger could actually work. You've probably heard the famous Bitcoin Pizza Day story from 2010. Some guy bought 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoins. It was the first time it was used for a real-world purchase, and it proved it could function as actual currency.
And this is the question that completely blew the doors off this whole thing. People started thinking, wait a minute, Bitcoin proved we can securely hold transaction data in these blocks. But what if? What if a block could hold more than that? What if it could hold computer code? What if it could hold the rules of an entire agreement? And that thinking led to one of the most powerful innovations in this space, smart contracts. The vending machine analogy is just perfect. Think about it. You put money in a vending machine, a specific code is triggered, and the machine automatically gives you a snack. No cashier needed. A smart contract is exactly that. It's an agreement where the terms are written in code. If a condition is met, then an action automatically happens. The contract enforces itself. And once you have smart contracts, oh man, the possibilities just explode. You get things like decentralized finance, or DeFi, which is trying to rebuild the entire financial system without big banks. You can track a head of lettuce all the way from the farm to your grocery store. You can prove you own a piece of digital art using NFTs. People are even exploring how to use it for secure voting. The potential here is just vast. So when you put all of this together, it really points to a future that could look dramatically different from the centralized world we live in today. In many, many ways, we're looking at a future that is decentralized. This is so much more than just a new piece of tech. It's a paradigm shift. It truly is a move from centralized control to decentralized trust, from opacity to transparency, and from manual processes to automated systems. It's basically a whole new framework for how we can organize ourselves and build trust in an increasingly digital world. And that brings us to one last really big question to leave you with. This technology holds incredible promise for security, for transparency, for giving power back to individuals. But as that power shifts away from old institutions and toward these new networks, it forces us to ask some pretty important questions. In a world without a central boss, who really holds the power? Something to think about. Thanks so much for watching.